Hello, I'm happy today to bring to you Reverend Karyl Huntley Sadler. She has been a minister for many years, which she'll tell you about that. And we are very happy to have her as part of our Wise Sage projects. So Reverend Karyl, please tell us about your beginnings and how you found Science of Mind.
Well, first of all, Marilyn, I want to thank you for inviting me to do this. I still think of myself as a beginner in so many ways. And so to have something wise to say, we'll see what happens. I'm really fortunate in that I'm one of those who was raised in Science of Mind. When I was two years old, my mom, Doris Huntley, who was a minister, not a minister, but a practitioner's practitioner and a teacher of practitioner studies for many, many years in her later life. We moved, the two of us moved to California to live with her aunt, my great aunt, in Los Angeles. And my mom, who had been taking what the family called truth classes in Michigan. It could have been an offshoot of Emma Curtis Hopkins' work. I'm not sure about that. But their osteopath in Michigan had introduced them to truth classes based on my uncle's death in World War II. So my grandmother and my mom were already in metaphysics. So when my mom got to Los Angeles, she looked up Ernest Holmes and she went to his Wednesday noon talks, I guess at the Wilshire Theater or something like that. Well, because nobody was at home but me, you know, my aunt worked, Mom found a babysitter in what was then the Yellow Pages. So Mom would come back from these meetings with Ernest Holmes and the babysitter would say, "Oh, what did you think?" And so Mom would tell her what she thought, and then the babysitter would comment. And it wasn't too long before my mom said, "Do you know this stuff?" And darned if my babysitter wasn't a practitioner. So that just, I mean, we were on the path. That was it. So then when I was, oh gosh, in first grade, so that's 6, we moved to Tucson, Arizona, and Mom was a career girl. She was a buyer in ladies sportswear for a local department store that had already been in Tucson 100 years. They came with a wagon train. And so I started in the Methodist church because I liked to sing, and they had lots of choirs for every age group. But when Science of Mind came to Tucson, and I'm not really sure when that was, Mom started in that church. And by that time, I was along about in college. And so then after college, I moved back to Los Angeles. And at that time, I went directly to Founders Church and listened to Bill Hornaday. And from there, I had a short, well, you wanted also about my sibs, my family. My mom married when I was 10, remarried, and I had 2 sisters and a brother in that marriage. And we did a lot of traveling. We traveled to Mexico, traveled to Canada, we traveled to the World's Fair in New York. So I saw them as step sibs. They came on the weekends and on holidays, but I'm still in touch with them. They, although I think would be very comfortable with the metaphysical beliefs. In fact, I know they are. I didn't attend church with them. So then back to me and my careers. I was a high school teacher for 3 years, and then I started in the college textbook business. I was a sales rep for a couple of different companies, and all of my careers, the ministry has definitely been the longest, but teaching, textbooks, and ministry have all been deeply intellectual for me. And I love that. I love to think deeply. So I was in West Covina, California, and I went to Bill Hemphill's church.
Mhm.
And that was about in 1973. And I started taking classes from Bill Hemphill every once in a while, going back down to Founders Church. And then I had a year in New York City. One of the ways of being promoted in the textbook business was to become an editor. So I did become an editor of teacher preparation books and chemistry, for God's sakes, which I knew absolutely nothing of. But I kind of babysat the production of textbooks in those two areas. And I lived in New York City for about a year and traveled to many college campuses. At that time, um, I did some metaphysical dabbling in New York City, but didn't find anything that I really, really loved. So then back out to California again, in Northern California, and I really followed my desire to become a practitioner. So in 1984, I became a practitioner, and at that time, I was married and had a baby, and then I was in Lloyd Tupper's church at the time, and he Lloyd, I think, following a deathbed wish of Bob Scott, took the Robert Scott School of Ministry from San Jose up to Marin County in Sausalito. So I entered the School of Ministry, and at the same time, I was the registrar for the School of Ministry.
Uh-huh.
So it was kind of a funny time when there wasn't a lot of national organization about the schools of ministry. But Reverend Francione and I sort of ran that campus and attracted students. And Francine was ahead of me. She was a minister. But I became a minister and then started the first church that I was the minister of in San Francisco, the Spiritual Arts Center. And so this was in the Mission for some
What years?
reason. This was 19. I graduated in 1989. Started the church in 1989, and we had a church in the Mission District in what was the nuns' quarters, I think, for the Mission in San Francisco. It was right across the street from the Mission. Well, 1989 was a horrible time for AIDS, and we lost like 12 men that first year. It was horrible. But that's what started my ministry. And Greg Tallman, who's also an amazing name, gone now to the next realm, but he was my administrator and music director. And we had a wonderful time being the Spiritual Arts Center. And we gave this Science of Mind message through musicals and operas. I mean, I did a talk on Dido and Aeneas, and Greg would do the music. We did Johnny Appleseed, and Greg would do the music. So it was a very interesting time. Then I divorced my first husband, and I was being courted by my second husband, and we got married, and I got pregnant right away. And at that point, I was looking at the Santa Rosa Church as an assistant minister, because at that time, Reverend Mary Murray Shelton had been my teacher. I loved her. There was an opening for an assistant minister, and um, and this is how the science of mind philosophy manifests for me. Um, Someone had come into my office, and another minister in the area, and she said, I'm going to candidate for the Santa Rosa position. And instantly I thought, well, I think that's my position. It was like, oh, what a good idea. I'm going to do that too. And, um, and so it happened that way, that I got that position as Reverend Mary's assistant minister. And I was there for 4 years before the opening came for my home church, which was then, Lloyd's Church. That's where I went to the School of Ministry. That's where I went from to start my first church. And that church opened up again in Marin. And at that time, I thought, that is my next position. And so I did candidate there. And so that was, boy, I didn't write this down. That was 1995. 1995.
Karyl, what happened with the mission, the church down in the mission?
That ultimately went to Reverend Brent. And that there was that charter kind of went to a couple of ministers, but ultimately that church still is, I don't know what it's called now, but it's that charter is still active.
Oh, okay, great.
In San Francisco. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so that's that. From 1995 to August 1st of this year, 2018, I was the senior minister at the Golden Gate Center for Spiritual Living. And that was my mom's home church. My children went to youth church there. My children, a son, Michael, who is now 33, and a daughter, Melanie, who is 25, they both internalized the positive attitude, the can do, can manifest, can have a life that's so satisfactory with no complaints, that they are living it. They're living it. I couldn't be happier.
That's wonderful.
So that's kind of my ministry. Over the years, one of the things I've noticed is that I've kind of compared Science of Mind ministries to chiropractic practices, because chiropractors usually have something that they really, really like. They have a particular technique they like. They have color therapies, some of them. They have vitamins practices, some of them, but they all work on the spine. Well, Science of Mind, I think, is the same way. We all know that it is done unto us as we believe. We all know that God is in and through every single thing. And that manifests in very different and interesting ways, depending upon the interests and the personality of the minister. Mm-hmm. So even though now we have the topics for each Sunday, if we choose to use them, I think that our ministries are so different and interesting. And although we say it's principle, not personality, I think that the personality and the interests of the minister provide the great variety within the continuity of Science of Mind. And I love that. So my little place that I love to play turned out to be ritual and earth-based spirituality. I did quite a bit of research into what's called paganism, although I don't use that word because it has some baggage along with it. But the ancient religions where the earth was revered and the waters were revered and the seasons were holy celebrations strike me as so compatible with Science of Mind, because in earth-based spirituality and in science of mind, everything is holy. In both places, it is do as you will and harm no one. In both places, it is look for the good and praise it. And you have a great deal of say in how your life turns out. So in my own ministry, I did celebrate the ancient holidays of Yule and the summer solstice um, and Halloween, which used to be called Samhain in some of the British countries, that just have such a lineage and such a satisfaction when we talk about what our ancestors felt was holy and how sweet it is to think about that now, because we still live on the same planet with the same seasons. And although we spend a lot of time in front of our computers, it is the weather and the arc of the sun and the phases of the moon that our soul loves. Our soul loves it. And so that has been the deep, deep satisfaction in my interpretation of science of mind. So,
So let me ask you, during your, how many years were you at Golden Gate? 25, 28 years?
yeah, about 28 years. Yeah.
Okay. And two things. One is so interesting that your ministry has been, the church, the center has been turned over to who else?
Reverend Mary Murray Shelton. Yes,
okay,
we have kind of hopscotched through science of mind churches.
Wonderful. But now back to your ministry. Where were you involved with any interfaith or other communities during your years at Golden Gate?
I did attend some interfaith work, interfaith meetings, and I was on some committees here and there to accomplish some things in Marin County, and I love that too. I love to find the commonalities in religious philosophy and practice, and that's one of the things that I know Ernest Holmes, as the story goes, thought that science of mind would be good for the Methodists and good for the Catholics and good for the Jews. And I have had all of those in my community, and we have had Seder meals many, many years to celebrate the Jewish practices. And because science of mind is so user-friendly and I would say non-specific. I mean, we have a couple of beliefs, I think, that God is everywhere, in and through all things. That's one. And our mind is creative. That's another. And I can't think of anything else. You know, that's pretty much what we teach. And it can be applied in every faith tradition and in every wisdom tradition, I think. And so with my intellectual bent of, you know, putting pieces together and making a puzzle and following this philosophy and that philosophy and looking into ancient Egypt and all, I just love to know that I can apply my spiritual truth in and through pretty much any philosophy that is, well, let's see, flexible at all. The inflexible spiritual paths I have a problem with, but it works for their people. So I have no complaints there either.
Tell us about the books you've written on ceremonies and creating ceremonies for different occasions.
Oh, thank you. That's my absolute love. And so I wrote a book called Real Life Rituals, and I was supported in that by the spirit, by our church, by the home church, and that has been used in many classes about how to do weddings, how to do memorials, how to do baby blessings, but there's a lot of other ceremonies in there around the ancient holidays, but also about transition points in everyone's life, like graduation or retirement or naming a pet or having a birthday or getting a driver's license. And in fact, it was the driver's license ritual that was the very first one that I wrote. And I wrote it for my son when he turned 16. And the blessed boy, it wasn't quite ready on the day he was 16. And so he put off getting his driver's license for 3 days. If you can imagine a 16-year-old boy doing that, so I could do the ritual with him. And now that young man is just having his fiance move in with him, and they are going to let me, by Zoom or Skype or something like that, do a ritual with the two of them in their home. And so my son, my sweet son, is non-resistant to my rituals. And then my daughter, Melanie, she just moved into her first house that she ever bought in her life. And she works at a vineyard, a winery. And so she gets home, she works weekends and she gets home late after a work day. But boy, that day that we were moving her in, she came in with her little bunch of sage and said, "We have to bless this house." And so everybody stopped and we blessed the house. So it is, it's so much a part of my life. And I do my own rituals with myself. And I have done so many upon personal request, like blessing homes for sales or blessing milestone birthdays, like 70 years old. Or I did a ritual recently with a woman who was having a hysterectomy. And so my second book on rituals is almost complete. And so it'll be interesting marketing that, but I hope I have enough readers out there that the second book will be as successful as the first.
Well, we'd love to have a copy of your books in the archives, as we ask all of our authors to donate a book, a copy, so it's in the archives that will be forever, even
Perfect.
after you run out.
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah, so now one other thing, I believe your son is a professional pianist, is that correct?
He is an opera conductor, and on the way to becoming an opera conductor, he has a degree in piano and is a professional pianist, and that was his entree into the world of opera, because in opera rehearsal, the singers have to rehearse with live music. They don't do it on CDs or anything. And so Michael was the assistant conductor, which was the rehearsal conductor for a decade or so in various places. And now he is the primary music director for Opera Memphis.
That's wonderful. So to kind of bring this to a close, do you have some thoughts about science of mind and the world and the future, and perhaps some wise words for whoever is watching this and their life?
I do. I believe that the power of science of mind, as Ernest Holmes said, the mind, body, and spirit. And he said, treat and move your feet. I think that sometimes we can get so caught up in the mental, gymnastics. I mean, that is a pejorative word, but if we stop there, it will only be a mental exercise. So I believe that some sort of following our philosophy, our thinking, our affirmations, and our spiritual mind treatment with positive action in the world is something that is really necessary. I think that one of the downsides of science of mind is that we can look at conditions in the world and say, well, it's their consciousness. This is what they have brought upon themselves. And I think that's pretty heartless. I think that concentrated effort to do good in the world is going to be what takes science of mind to the next level, because we know that it works on a personal level. We know that managing our mind and looking for the good and having no complaints and being able to create a case in our mind for why this is a blessing instead of a curse, all of that is so valuable for the individual.
Mhm.
And we are so into that same thing that makes each minister kind of like a chiropractor is the thing that holds us back as well, because it's like, I'm an individual, I'm going to use this philosophy for my benefit, and we have a philosophy that can benefit the world when it's followed by action. And so that's why we look at ministers like David Alt, who has an entire program in a tropical country, to help people there. It's so impressive. We think that's so wonderful and so fabulous. And I think that is to take science of mind to the next level and have it be a worldwide movement. We have to benefit the world by addressing the circumstances in the world and take our consciousness along with conscious action to help those who need help in the physical realm, in addition to giving them affirmations. That's what I think would be really beneficial for all.
Thank you very much for joining with us and your wise sage remarks and comments. And we loved hearing your story. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you. Many blessings to you and your work.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Leo, founder of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. I hope you have enjoyed this wonderful interview with this very special wise sage person. They've been around for quite a while. If you value these interviews, we invite you to show your generosity by making a donation or joining as a member of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. Thank you for watching.